The wait is over. Millennial Kingdom plus Mud Flood is here. At over 450 pages, my latest book is jam packed with information, including a large swath of scripture, all of which details the redemptive promises of his story. The Millennial Kingdom of Messiah happened precisely on schedule. You can purchase your own copy at Amazon.com or Sacred Word Publishing. Please do me a favor and drop in a review. I appreciate your support. Shalom, Hebrews and Shebrews. I believe this is our fourth episode officially of Deep Text. I'm really excited for this series. I am joined tonight by Rob and James. I didn't even check if their mics are on. Are you guys here tonight?
Yes, sir.
All right. We're going to be reading through the Apocalypse of Elijah. Now, when I originally came up with the series Deep Text, I passed it by Rob and James. I think I came up with a list of about 30 books that I wanted to cover. This was not on that list. And this is the exciting, I hope people feel the excitement of exploring these extra biblical books like I do, because I learned new things that I never would have known before. It's like like a breadcrumb trail. You follow the rabbit, right? And last week we were reading through the history of Joseph the carpenter, and there was an interesting quote towards the bottom where it talked about the four prophets at the end of time. Now everybody knows of Elijah and Enoch, but it had two other names in there, and they were, if I can recall, Tabitha and Sheila. Now, I was immediately intrigued. Well, who is this Tabitha and Sheila? And is there a second witness on this? Well, lo and behold, I have not looked into Sheila yet. I've had other things I was occupied with this week. But the next day I wake up and the first thing I do is I start, looking into the archives for a Tabitha. And I came up with the Apocalypse of Elijah. We're going to read about her tonight. And of course, in the history of Joseph the carpenter, says all four of them die. Now, Sheila does not appear in this book, but Tabitha does. And I will quickly point out to everybody one of the unique things about this book. This is clearly a post-messianic book. This was written after Messiah. I take that. I don't know if it was written after he ascended to heaven or after the temple was destroyed. One of the interesting things about this book is that very early on in official church history, the church fathers were arguing about this book because there are quotes in here that Shaul lifted into his letters. And so the argument was, did this book come before Paul's letters or afterwards? Now, in my opinion, there could very well be a third source that both this book and Paul was quoting. The reason I say that is I don't think that this is a Paulianity book, and I don't necessarily think Paul was quoting from this book. I actually think this is post 70 AD, post Revelation, and what you start seeing, there was the literature that comes out, and you guys all know that my theory is it was about 500 years, give or take, but from Messiah to the ushering into the millennial kingdom. And in that 700, 400, whatever, those years, there was a bunch of literature that came out. None of them felt quite as inspired as the generation of the disciples, and clearly. But these books, they all change gears. And whereas Revelation, undoubtedly in my mind, talks about the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, these books are now switching gears to the ushering in of the kingdom and the destruction of Rome. So that's what we're seeing with this book. And if you guys can pit yourself in that time period, the first time I read this book about 3 years ago, I wasn't thinking along these lines of thought. I still thought Revelation was future tense. I was in that camp. I was, questioning some things. And so I read this book and I'm like, this this doesn't really make sense. I don't really this doesn't make sense to me as a book that is future tense in our own lives. But if you can take yourself back in time to the years of the Nazarene and the early Christian and the Christians and the founding of the Roman Catholic Church, and all those things that was happening in that time, the age of apostasy. You could picture yourself in there. This seems to make more sense, and there'll be things I'll probably comment on as we go through this. All right, here we go. The Apocalypse of Elijah, and as you can tell, there's also a PDF file here. I'll be reading directly from the website, the Unexpected Cosmology. But I also put on here a PDF that you can download and take with you on your own computer. The word of Yahuwah came to me, saying, Son of man, say to his people, why do you add sin to your sins and anger Yahuwah Elohim who created you? Don't love the world or the things which are in the world, for the boasting of the world and its destruction belong to the devil. Remember that Yahuwah of glory, who created everything, had mercy upon you so that he might save us from the captivity of this age. For many times the devil desired not to let the sun rise above the earth and not to let the earth yield fruit, since he desires to consume men like a fire which rages in stubble, and he desires to swallow them like water. Therefore, on account of this, the Elohim of glory had mercy upon us, and he sent his Son to the world so that he might save us from the captivity. He did not inform an angel or an archangel or any principality when he was about to come to us, but he changed himself to be like a man when he was about to come to us so that he might save us from flesh. Therefore, become sons to him, since he is a father to you. Remember that he has prepared thrones and crowns for you in heaven, saying, Everyone who will obey me will receive thrones and crowns among those who are mine. Yahuwah said, I will write my name upon their forehead, and I will seal their right hand, and they will not hunger or thirst. Neither will the son of lawlessness prevail over them, nor will the thrones hinder them, but they will walk with the angels up to my city. Now as for the sinners, they will be shamed, and they will not pass by the thrones. But the thrones of death will seize them and rule over them, because the angels will not agree with them. They have alienated themselves from his dwellings. Hear, O wise men of the land, concerning the deceivers who will multiply in the last times, so that they will set down for themselves doctrines which do not belong to Elohim, setting aside the law of Elohim, those who have made their belly their Elohim, saying, the fast does not exist, nor did Elohim create it, making themselves stranger to the covenant of Elohim and robbing themselves of the glorious promises. Now these are not ever correctly established in the firm faith. Therefore, don't let those people lead you astray. Remember that from the time when he created the heavens, Yahuwah created the fast for a benefit to men on account of the passions and desires which fight against you, so that the evil will not inflame you. But it is a pure fast which I have created, says Yahuwah. The one who fasts continually will not sin, although jealousy and strife are with him. Let the pure one fast, but whenever the one who fasts is not pure, he has angered Yahuwah and also the angels. And he has grieved his soul, gathering up wrath for himself for the day of wrath. But a pure fast is what I created, with a pure heart and pure hands. It releases sin. It heals diseases. It casts out demons. It is effective up to the throne of Elohim for an ointment and for a release from sin by means of a pure prayer. Who among you, if he is honored in his craft, will go forth to the field without a tool in his hand? Or who will go forth to the battle to fight without a breastplate on? If he is found, will he not be killed because he despised the service of the king? Likewise, no one is able to enter the holy place if he is double minded. The one who is double minded in his prayer is darkness to himself, and even the angels do not trust him. Therefore, be single minded in Yahuwah at all times, so that you might know every moment. Chapter 2. Furthermore, concerning the kings of Assyria and the dissolution of the heaven and the earth and the things beneath the earth, now therefore will not be overcome, says Yahuwah, nor will they fear in the battle. When they see a king who rises in the north, who will be called the king of Assyria and the king of injustice, he will increase in his battles and his disturbances against Egypt. The land will groan together because your children will be seized. Many will desire death in those days, but death will flee from them. And a king who will be called the king of peace, or the king of shalom, will rise up in the west. He will run upon the sea like a roaring lion. He will kill the king of injustice, and he will take vengeance on Egypt with battles and much bloodshed. It will come to pass in those days that he will command a peace and a vain gift in Egypt. He will give peace to those who are holy, saying, the name of Elohim is one. He will give honors to the saints, and an exalting to the places of the saints. He will give vain gifts to the house of Elohim. He will wander around in the cities of Egypt with guile, without their knowledge. He will take count of the holy places. He will weigh the idols of the heathen. He will take count of their wealth. He will establish priests for them. He will command that the wise men and the great ones of the people be seized, and they will be brought to the metropolis, which is by the sea, saying, there is but one language. But when you hear peace and joy exist, I will... ... That part is cut out. Now I will tell you his signs, so that you might know him. For he has 2 sons, one on his right and one on his left. The one on his right will receive a demonic face, and he will fight against the name of Elohim. Now 4 kings will descend from that king. In his 30th year he will come up to Memphis, and he will build a temple in Memphis. On that day his own son will rise up against him and kill him. The whole land will be disturbed. On that day he will issue an order over the whole land, so that the priests of the land and all of the saints will be seized, saying, you will repay doubly every gift and all of the good things which my father gave to you. He will shut up the holy places. He will take their houses. He will take their sons prisoner. He will order, and sacrifices and abominations and bitter evils will be done in the land. He will appear before the sun and the moon. On that day the priests of the land will tear their clothes. Woe to you, O rulers of Egypt, in those days, because your day has passed. The violence being done to the poor will turn against you, and your children will be seized as plunder. In those days the city of Egypt will groan, for the voice of the one who sells and the one who buys will not be heard. The markets of the cities of Egypt will become dusty. Those who are in Egypt will weep together. They will desire death, but death will flee and leave them. In those days they will run up to the rocks and leap off, saying, fall upon us, and still they will not die. A double affliction will multiply upon the whole land. In those days the king will command, and all the nursing women will be seized and brought to him bound. They will suckle serpents, and their blood will be drawn from their breast, and it will be applied as poison to the arrows. On account of their distress of the cities, he will command again, and all the young lads from 12 years and under will be seized and presented in order to teach them to shoot arrows. The midwife who is upon the earth will grieve. The woman who has given birth will lift her eyes to heaven, saying, why did I sit upon the birth stool to bring forth a son to the earth? The barren woman and the virgin will rejoice, saying, it is our time to rejoice, because we have no child upon the earth, but our children are in heaven. In those days, 3 kings will arise among the Persians, and they will take captive the Yahudim who are in Egypt. They will bring them to Jerusalem, and they will inhabit it and dwell there. Then, when you hear that there is security in Jerusalem, tear your garments, O priests of the land, because the son of perdition will soon come. In those days, the lawless one will appear in the holy places. In those days, the kings of the Persians will hasten, and they will stand to fight with the kings of Assyria. 4 kings will fight with 3. They will spend 3 years in that place until they carry off the wealth of the temple which is in that place. In those days, blood will flow from Kos to Memphis. The river of Egypt will become blood, and they will not be able to drink from it for 3 days. Woe to Egypt and those who are in it. In those days, a king will arise in the city which is called the City of the Sun, and the whole land will be disturbed. Flee to Memphis with the Persians. In the 6th year, the Persian kings will plot an ambush in Memphis. They will kill the Assyrian king. The Persians will take vengeance on the land, and they will command to kill all the heathen and the lawless ones. They will command to build the temples of the saints. They will give double gifts to the house of Elohim. They will say, the name of Elohim is one. The whole land will hail the Persians. Even the remnant who did not die under the afflictions will say, Yahuwah has sent us a righteous king, so that the land will not become a desert. He will command that no royal matter be presented for 3 years and 6 months. The land will be full of good and abundant well-being. Those who are alive will go to those who are dead, saying, rise up and be with us in this rest. Chapter 3. In the 4th year of that king, the son of lawlessness will appear, saying, I am Hamashiach, although he is not. Don't believe him. When Hamashiach comes, he will come in the manner of a covey of doves, with the crown of doves surrounding him. He will walk upon the heavens' vaults, with the sign of the cross leading him. The whole world will behold him like the sun which shines from the eastern horizon to the western. This is how he will come, with all his angels surrounding him. But the son of lawlessness will begin to stand again in the holy places. He will say to the sun, fall, and it will fall. He will say, shine, and it will do it. He will say, darken, and it will do it. He will say to the moon, become bloody, and it will do it. He will go forth with them from the sky. He will walk upon the sea and the rivers as upon dry land. He will cause the lame to walk. He will cause the deaf to hear. He will cause the dumb to speak. He will cause the blind to see. The lepers he will cleanse. The ill he will heal. The demons he will cast out. He will multiply his signs and his wonders in the presence of everyone. He will do the works which Hamashiach did, except for raising the dead alone. In this you will know that he is the son of lawlessness, because he is unable to give life. For behold, I will tell you his signs, so that you might know him. He is a ... of a skinny-legged young lad, having a tuft of gray hair at the front of his bald head. His eyebrows will reach to his ears. There is a leprous bare spot on the front of his hands. He will transform himself in the presence of those who see him. He will become a young child. He will become old. He will transform himself in every sign, but the signs of his head will not be able to change. Therein you will know that he is the son of lawlessness. Chapter 4. The virgin, whose name is Tabitha, will hear that the shameless one has revealed himself in the holy places, and she will put on her garment of fine linen. And she will pursue him up to Yehuda, scolding him up to Jerusalem, saying, O shameless one, O son of lawlessness, O you who have been hostile to all the saints. Then the shameless one will be angry at the virgin. He will pursue her up to the regions of the sunset. He will suck her blood in the evening. And he will cast her upon the temple, and she will become a healing for the people. She will rise up at dawn, and she will live and scold him, saying, O shameless one, you have no power against my soul or my body, because I live in Yahuwah always. And also, my blood which you have cast upon the temple has become a healing for the people. Then when Eliyahu and Enoch hear that the shameless one has revealed himself in the holy place, They will come down and fight with him, saying, "Are you indeed not ashamed when you attach yourself to the saints, because you are always estranged? You have been hostile to those who belong to heaven. You have acted against those belonging to the earth. You have been hostile to the thrones. You have acted against the angels. You are always a stranger. You have fallen from heaven like the morning stars. You were changed, and your tribe became dark for you. But you are not ashamed. When you stand firmly against Elohim, you are a devil." The shameless one will hear, and he will be angry, and he will fight with them in the marketplace of the great city, and he will spend 7 days fighting with them, and they will spend 3.5 days in the marketplace dead, while all the people see them. But on the fourth day they will rise up, and they will scold him, saying, "O shameless one, O son of lawlessness, are you indeed not ashamed of yourself, since you are leading astray the people of Elohim, for whom you did not suffer? Do you not know that we live in Yahuwah?" As the words were spoken, they prevailed over him, saying, "Furthermore, we will lay down before the flesh for the Ruach, and we will kill you, since you are unable to speak on that day, because we are always strong in Yahuwah. But you are also hostile to Elohim." The shameless one will hear, and he will be angry and fight them, and the whole city will surround them. On that day they will shout up to heaven as they shine, while all the people in all the world see them. The son of lawlessness will not prevail over them. He will be angry at the land, and he will seek to sin against the people. He will pursue all of the saints. They and the priest of the land will be brought back bound. He will kill them and destroy them, and their eyes will be removed with iron spikes. He will remove their skin from their heads. He will remove their nails one by one. He will command that vinegar and lime be put in their nose. Now those who are unable to bear up under the tortures of that king will take gold and flee over the fords to the desert places. They will lie down as one who sleeps. Yahuwah will receive their spirits and their souls to himself. Their flesh will petrify. No wild animals will eat them until the last day of the great judgment, and they will rise up and find a place of rest. But they will not be in the kingdom of Hamashiach as those who have endured, because Adonai said, "I will grant to them that they sit on my right hand." They will receive favor over others, and they will triumph over the son of lawlessness, and they will witness the dissolution of heaven and earth. They will receive the thrones of glory and the crowns. The 60 righteous ones who are prepared for this hour will hear, and they will gird on the breastplate of Yahuwah, and they will run to Jerusalem and fight with the shameless one, saying, "All powers which the prophets have done from the beginning, you have done. But you were unable to raise the dead, because you have no power to give life. Therein we have known that you are the son of lawlessness." He will hear, and he will be angry and command to kindle altars, and the righteous ones will be bound. They will be lifted up and burned. Chapter 5. And on that day, the heart of many will harden, and they will flee from him, saying, "This is not Hamashiach." Hamashiach does not kill the righteous. He does not pursue men so that he might seek them, but he persuades them with signs and wonders. On that day, Hamashiach will pity those who are his own, and he will send from heaven his 64,000 angels, each of whom has 6 wings. The sound will move heaven and earth when they give praise and glorify. Now those upon whose forehead the name of Messiah is written, and upon whose hand is the seal, both the small and the great, will be taken up upon their wings and lifted up before his wrath. Then Gabriel and Uriel will become a pillar of light, leading them into the Holy Land. It will be granted to them to eat from the tree of life. They will wear white garments, and angels will watch over them. They will not thirst, nor will the son of lawlessness be able to prevail over them. And on that day the earth will be disturbed, and the sun will darken, and peace will be removed from the earth. The birds will fall on the earth, dead. The earth will be dry. The waters of the sea will dry up. The sinners will groan upon the earth, saying, "What have you done to us, O son of lawlessness?" saying, "I am Hamashiach," when you are the devil. You are unable to save yourself so that you might save us. You produced signs in our presence until you alienated us from Hamashiach who created us. Woe to us because we listened to you. Lo now, we will die in a famine. Where indeed is now the trace of a righteous one, and we will worship him? Or where indeed is the one who will teach us, and we will appeal to him? Now indeed we will be wrathfully destroyed because we disobeyed Yahuwah. We went to the deep places of the sea, and we did not find water. We dug in the rivers and papyrus reeds, and we did not find water. Then on that day, the shameless one will speak, saying, Woe to me, because my time has passed by for me, while I was saying that my time would not pass by for me. My years became months, and my days have passed away as dust passes away. Now, therefore, I will perish together with you. Now, therefore, run forth to the desert, seize the robbers and kill them. Bring up the saints, for because of them the earth yields fruit. For because of them the sun shines upon the earth. For because of them the dew will come upon the earth. The sinners will weep, saying, You made us hostile to Yahuwah. If you are able, rise up and pursue them. Then he will take his fiery wings and fly out after the saints. He will fight with them again. The angels will hear and come down. They will fight with him a battle of many swords. It will come to pass on that day that Yahuwah will hear and command the heaven and the earth with great wrath, and they will send forth fire. And the fire will prevail over the earth 72 cubits. It will consume the sinners and the devils like stubble. A true judgment will occur. On that day, the mountains and the earth will utter speech. The byways will speak with one another, saying, Have you heard today the voice of a man who walks, who has not come to the judgment of the Son of Yahuwah? The sins of each one will stand against him in the place where they were committed, whether those of the day or of the night. Those who belong to the righteous, and will see the sinners, and those who persecuted them, and those who handed them over to death in their torments. Then the sinners in torment will see the place of the righteous, and thus grace will occur. In those days, that which the righteous will ask for many times will be given to them. On that day, Yahuwah will judge the heaven and the earth. He will judge those who transgress in heaven, and those who did so on earth. He will judge the shepherds of the people. He will ask about the flocks of heaven, and they will be given to him without any deadly guile existing in them. After these things, Eliyahu and Enoch will come down. They will lay down the flesh of the world, and they will receive their spiritual flesh. They will pursue the son of lawlessness and kill him, since he is not able to speak. On that day, he will dissolve in their presence like ice which was dissolved by a fire. He will perish like a serpent which has no breath in it. They will say to him, Your time has passed by for you. Now, therefore, you want those who believe you will perish. They will be cast into the bottom of the abyss, and it will be closed for them. On that day, Hamashiach the king and all his saints will come forth from heaven. He will burn the earth. He will spend 1,000 years upon it, because the sinners prevailed over it. He will create a new heaven and a new earth. No deadly devil will exist in them. He will rule with his saints, ascending and descending, while they are always with the angels, and they are with Hamashiach for 1,000 years. So there you have it. Sorry for the little technical difficulty there, but we'll get through that. And I'm curious what you, James and Rob, thought about that. Well, let me first start out by saying that the name Yahuwah. Now, as you guys know, when I don't like to read the Lord. There's reasons for that. Don't need to go over all that right now. But so if I see the Lord, I will put in there Yahuwah. And the unique thing about this manuscript is that this actually had the name of the Most High intact within it. Every single time that you see Yahuwah in all caps, Yahuah, that was originally in the document, as far as I'm concerned. as far as my knowledge goes, and that's really unique. That didn't really survive the years too well. So that's one of the things about this text that had me really excited the first time I read it.
That's very interesting. So the times that you placed in Yahweh with just the capital Y but the lowercase following letters, was that a translation that was the Lord and you switched it?
That's correct. Yeah. So I don't like to put in the Lord.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the big question. Does it mean Baal and all that? And that's a whole nother kind of rabbit trail. But yeah, so if it had all capital letters, it was there originally, and at least from the texts that are passed down to us. So okay, so let me just go through a few of my. I have like 5 pages of notes. I was just scribbling down as you were writing or reading. Um, Number one, we see that in chapter 1, verse 5, when it talks about how he came down to earth and like it wasn't announced, like not even Satan knew about it. That comes straight out of. I mean, I could source that with Ascension of Isaiah as well as Gospel of Nicodemus. Those are the two themes of those books that not even Satan knew who he was.
Yeah, that confirms what you were talking about before.
There was a few other. I could go on and on here. So this is really interesting. In chapter 1, verse 10, it talks about that the set apart would walk up to what's he said my city will walk up to means up to heaven. What's saying is that New Jerusalem. Hi, so it looks like someone is trying to talk. Not sure who. Well, what that tells us is that New Jerusalem doesn't come down yet. In fact, nowhere in this at all do we ever see New Jerusalem come down, including when Hamashiach comes down to rule on the earth. It's talked about how New Jerusalem is the city. It's called the city is in heaven, and it talks about that they would come up and down, and it actually says the Holy Land at this point is up in heaven, which is I think another reference for paradise. In this book, the nation of Israel is not called the Holy Land. And I think that's really telling.
Yeah, no, I want to add to that verse that you're talking about. It's saying there in verse 10, neither will the son of lawlessness prevail over them, nor will the thrones hinder them. So the principalities also will not be able to hinder them themselves.
That's right.
Interesting.
And another great thing about this that I'm always looking for, I tell you guys, one of the things that if I'm going to define it as scripture or not, one thing that's going to disqualify it, if a book were to tell me that the law of Yahuwah is done away with, I don't care who it's attributed to. If they're telling me that, circumcision's not really important anymore, I'm going to say that that book is either heavily tampered with by Rome or whoever wrote it was not inspired by the Ruach HaKodesh. I noticed that in the video I came out with last Sabbath, I think I didn't mean to when I wrote it, but I think it's going to step on some heads when it talks about the 8th grade day and how circumcision points to the 8th grade day, because a lot of people listening to that are going to be like, I don't like that because that means circumcision is still valid. Well, it says right here in verse 13, hear, O wise men of the land, concerning the deceivers who will multiply in the last time. So we're talking about the age of apostasy, as we've been over this timeline, so that they will set down for themselves doctrines which do not belong to Elohim, setting aside the law of Elohim. And so right there, boom, that is a huge, it would be a red flag if, I'm hearing a lot of feedback from somebody, I'm not sure who. It would be a huge red flag if they were to say the opposite. But here they're telling me that in this time period, many people who claim to be of Elohim have set aside the law of Elohim. Does that sound familiar? And it goes on to say they have become strangers of the covenant and they are robbing themselves.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that is that they are
Hey
they
guys,
them
turn it off.
they they will set down for themselves doctrines which do not belong to Elohim, as you said, and it's setting aside the law of Elohim. So by these the how would I say this? The description is just deceiver. Now, it's not saying antichrist or anything else. I mean, I guess you could translate it that way because it's like Christ, but it's not. Um, but this is deceivers. The deceivers are the ones who are setting aside the laws of Elohim, and it's hard to believe that when you look at today's religions,
That's
those that
opposing
teach the
believing
law
that
is set
Torah.
aside or done away with, that would qualify
Ira,
them as a deceiver. And they may not even know they are. They just don't know. They don't understand. If you were to take this, and we can take this and put it into Revelation. We could look at John, etc. Because this this reading here coincides a whole lot with the book of Revelation, what we read and what we'll be discussing. And I'd like to see if anyone points out anything that did not did not jive well with it. But to me, it's giving some more details in the language that we see here. That's a little bit more clear than in Revelation.
well, here's why I think that this book does not line up with Revelation, and it could be. This could be, it could be the story of Revelation that takes place in 70 AD. I think just about all of us here are jiving with that. The Revelation was fulfilled by 70 AD, at least most of it. Here's one thing. Here's a big difference. Yahusha said to flee the city when they see the desolation of the temple. Well, in chapter 4, verse 24, let me see if I could turn there real quick. It actually has very different words. It's almost the opposite. Now, those who are unable to bear up under the tortures of that king will take gold and flee over the forest to the desert places. Now, it's a little bit different because they're grabbing gold and they're running, that's a little interesting. But it's almost like this idea that they're fleeing and they should have been staying or something. I don't know. That's a little bit different than Yahusha's command. So right there, that would be a disqualifier for me if this were, or a big red flag, a juicy red flag, a Buzz Aldrin moon flag, if this was to be the Revelation account. I think there's something different going on, and
Yeah,
I would also add that what I find see, now I can't prove that the events in this book happened. I can't prove it. That's if that's going to be a deal breaker for some people. But as I pointed out, there are so many prophecies that point to the destruction of the beast would include Persia and the let me see the Assyrians. It's particularly the Assyrians coming down, and that they would come in and invade Rome. Now, it doesn't say Rome here specifically. Interesting enough, it talks about Egypt. It talks about all these different places. It never says Rome. I actually wonder if the King of Peace is the Pope. I'm not sure on that, or one of the popes. But the political situation does seem to have a lot of resemblances to what we see with the introduction of the Dark Ages around 500 AD. We see a lot of the same things happening. So, just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, no, before we continue on that, I want to touch on 24, and maybe this might give a little change of view on that. Is the way I'm reading it, those who are unable to bear up under the tortures of that king will take gold and flee over the fords to the desert places. I'm not taking that as remnant. I'm taking that as just those who didn't want to bear under the torches of the king. Because it says here, they will lie down as one who sleeps. Yahweh will receive their spirits and their souls to himself. Their flesh will petrify. No wild animals will eat them until the last day of the great judgment, and they will rise up and find a place, and they will find a place of rest. But they will not lie in the kingdom of Hamashiach as those who have endured because of Adonai. So uh, those obviously aren't going to be going in the kingdom, but they are going to rest and die. So it to me it it doesn't quite match up with how the revelation plays out exactly on that one. I think that maybe that's perhaps what you were trying to point to.
Yeah, the situation seems a little bit different. In fact, um, here's what I think we're seeing, because in the Book of Revelation, at the end of the study, I started out with one view and I ended completely sold on the fact that Babylon is unquestionably Jerusalem. I mean, it straight out says it, that's where
Right.
Messiah was killed. You can't deny that, and so Babylon is destroyed. Now, and then it says it's going to be a haunt for demons and devils and so on and so forth. Well, here's the fact of the matter. Jerusalem exists. Now, we can all ask, is the land of Israel the historical land? I've come back to the position that it is. I believe that and I've explained this. I've gone over this countless times now. I don't want to be a broken record as to why I think it is. I Let's just say in a nutshell that I think there's a reason Satan wants us to know what the land is, and he wants to create his own fake exodus. He wants to create his own mass exodus into the land. But Jerusalem was rebuilt at some time. And when we look at history, official history, we see the Crusades. And a lot of the writing at this time, which I believe is post 70 AD, is talking about this big climax that's going to usher in the kingdom that's going to be based around Jerusalem. And a lot of that seemed to be a lot of the attitude about the coming Crusades. When the King of Peace and all these different people, they all clash, all the people come together. And we do see the scene coming here to Jerusalem. So a part of me thinks that and Israel's not the big player in this. I mean, it talks a lot about Egypt and Persia and these other places all around there, but it kind of does climax at the Jerusalem at the end. It never says Jerusalem is destroyed. So I that's again, that this is where I'm seeing a lot of indicators here that this is a post 70 AD event. Again, this is all just my opinion here, my speculation. But that it screams out to me there. Oh,
Yeah, I can see that.
I wanted to ask you guys what you guys thought about the in there's so much I want to ask about, but what does the impure fast mean to you guys? It says that an impure fast angers Yahuwah, whereas a pure fast casts out demons, which is totally legit. That makes total sense. I mean, we were talking about that earlier tonight, detoxing, and I think detoxing does remove demons. And any kind of impurities, right? Toxins from the body. But what do you guys think of an impure fast? I can read over that.
Well, impure may very well be something, to your point, not related to getting out the toxins. So, I know people will say, "Well, I'm going to fast by not, I don't know, drinking coffee, for example." But I think obviously there's a proper way of fasting, not just fasting something if you want to, you know, get out the demons and so forth, and have the power in the fast. So when you talk about detoxing and demons, as we know that the relationship of parasites and such things as that affect your mental capabilities, your mental abilities in thinking, desires, etc. We know parasites or parasitical entities affect our actions and our thoughts, and so properly fasting can get rid of those and give us a clear mind in shalom. So an improper fast without it being defined here would possibly be something uh, that is not effective, and I don't know if I know the definitions of that off the top of my head.
Well, this again seems to be another a parallel with Revelation in that we see one of the great sins in that's listed in Revelation that at least in the Greek that sends people into lake of fire is pharmakia. Pharmakia, of course, is where we get in the King James version witchcraft or sorcery, which in fact it is. And I think everybody listening knows that, is enlightened to that. At least I hope, but you never really know. Well, it's interesting here because it says, verse 20, but a pure fast is what I created with a pure heart and pure hands. And it says that it releases sin, which is true. And I love this. It heals diseases. Of course, it says it casts out demons too. But that's exactly what, before we started the recording tonight, that's exactly what we were talking about, is detoxing, and how the official narrative, our controllers, they all have us convinced, well, not all of us obviously, but they have the bulk of humanity convinced that they need pharmakia to get better. They need this poison, this witchcraft, which then only makes them sicker, and it just leads to one thing to the next, to another intervention, which somehow is a cyclic routine of proving that you need the pharmakia because you have all these diseases. You need to get better, and it's just unending. And it's, you become a lifetime patient, and it's a, what is it, $1 billion-trillion industry. I don't know how much pharmakia is. It's, tons of money. But it says right here that contrarily, the fast heals diseases, and that's spot on. It's incredible. So it right there, I see that the parallel between Revelation and this right here. Found that kind of a little interesting. James, you've been real quiet.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, just want to add to that is that it says here if you see verse 17, the one who fasts continually will not sin, although jealousy and strife are within him. So my thought on that is the continuous fast. Um, it's it's subverting or suppressing the desire. So we talk about the jealousy and strife that are within a person. When you're continually fasting, and those who have fasted would agree, I would think that you have an experience of shalom. It's just a peaceful mentality when you're fasting. Your desires are suppressed, so you're just kind of at like that that even feeling of just smoothness, I guess I'd say. And so those desires are being suppressed, so it makes it a well grounded mental status when you are continually fasting.
So, well, I have a few more comments to mention, but James, you've been quiet tonight. Do you have any thoughts on this? Are you still with us?
Yeah, on the fasting in particular, what came to my mind when I heard impure fasting was, when Yahusha said, when you fast, you anoint your head, don't really make it a big deal that you're fasting, and continue doing your daily stuff. Don't show everyone that you're fasting. Don't do it like those other guys are doing it. And that's where we see the blessings and the rewards coming in fasting, and because our Father sees the things that are done in secret, and he's the one that is rewarding us. And if we do it in an impure way and make a big fuss about it, then we're already receiving our reward on earth, right? That's what came to my mind. But I really like the points that you and Rob were making regarding that too.
I'm trying to remember what book it is, and we'll probably read it in this series. And it's it's one of the extra gospels, and I'm kicking myself trying to remember it now, but it talks about our guardian angels and how all of it, when we basically, there's two types of people. There's people that the angels enjoy serving, and people who the angels do not enjoy serving, and they can't wait till they die and get somebody else because this person is a miserable person to be around. It's reminded me of this right here, and we'll probably get to that in this series, and I'll want to refer back to this. In verse 11 of chapter 1, we see this is really interesting. Now, as for the sinners, now let me start in verse 10. Um, neither will the son of lawlessness prevail over them, nor will the thrones hinder them. And Rob talked about this a little bit, but it says, but they will walk with the angels up to my city, which I earlier commented on. So the idea is that you're going up to New Jerusalem and you're going with the angels, and the angels are escorting you there and giving you admittance into the city. And we know that there are angels that guard the gates. So if the angels don't want you getting in, you're not getting in. But then it says, now as for the sinners, they will be shamed, and they will not pass by the thrones, but the thrones of death will seize them, which is a really interesting way to think of Gehenna. Revelation, makes it out like you will receive your inheritance with Satan and his angels, which is, you've cashed out your eternal inheritance to receive your slice of the pie now, and that slice of the pie ends up in the lake of fire. So it's really interesting how it says here, the thrones of death. I've never heard that before, but that's such a great phrase, and I will probably use that. Maybe I'll have like a book titled The Thrones of Death. It's so good. But the thrones of death will seize them and rule over them because the angels will not agree with them. So that's really interesting, because I'm seeing that with a lot of these extra biblical books. We see, like in Third Baruch is one of them, where the angels actually report to Yahuwah about each of us, each and every day. And they're like, yeah, so and so is, you never believe what this guy was doing today. And can I get a reassignment? I'm not happy with this dude. He's not bringing me shalom. We've actually seen that. Rob is part of the study when we did the Testament of Job. And as he's dying, he has his daughters play this beautiful music to bless the angels. And I don't think many of us probably think about that throughout our day, like the music we play and the things we watch, the things we talk about. And we're like, are we blessing? We always think about, honoring Yahuwah, but, are we blessing the angels around us? They have to listen to it too. So I thought that's a really interesting comparison there, that it's all based on, a lot of this is based on the angels liking you or not. So here's another one. You guys can jump in anytime, Rob and James. There was another one. I'm going to go back down to chapter 4.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I can do chapter 1, verses 25. Likewise, no one is able to enter the holy place if he is double minded. And we see this in so much in Scripture, and we see it in other books too. The Didache, the Shepherd of Hermas, and in the Scripture, this talk about the double-mindedness, this doubtfulness, this not being steadfast in your faith and thought. It's always a warning to us to not be doubtful or double-minded. And we in verse 26, the one who is double-minded in his prayer is darkness to himself. So we can't be doubting or not able to trust in him, because it says here, right after that says, and even the angels do not trust him. So as you were just talking about the angels, I could only imagine the angels who are uh, around us, how they see the doubting. And as we know, the doubting is also referenced in, well, we'll be doing James here, and in James it talks about doubting. It's like scales upon the sea. Imagine trying to weigh something on a scale that is sitting on top of the sea. It's just impossible. So, and that's part of why these warnings are there for us, not to be double-minded.
I'm curious what you guys thought about the 60 righteous ones. I'm going to turn there in chapter 4, verse 30. Find it. Here it is. It says, the 60 righteous ones who are prepared for this hour will hear. So again, this is a little bit different than Revelation, that we don't have the 144,000 in here, but we get the 60 righteous ones. They are prepared for this hour, and they will gird on the breastplate of Yahuwah, and they will run to Jerusalem and fight with the shameless ones. So, I know Michael's big view on the the set apart the saints of the millennial kingdom is that they're like soldiers. He's described them, and this is kind of interesting because again, it's not the 144,000, but it's the 60, and there's only 60 of them, and they are soldiers that run to Jerusalem to fight with, I'm assuming the Antichrist, the shameless one, saying, "All power which the prophets have done from the beginning, you have done, but you were unable to raise the dead because you have no power to give life." So, it does. Do either of you have any thoughts on that? It's okay if you don't, because I don't know.
Yeah, I thought that number was interesting, and I could not correlate that with anything that I've read to kind of line up. So yeah, I don't have anything
How many
to
were
enlighten on that.
how many were selected in the Book of Acts? I think there were 70.
Right, 70 or 72, depending on the translation. But yeah,
Okay, so obviously not the same. And again, the interesting theme in here is one of the main themes of this book is who has the power to give life. And these 60 say that they're speaking to the Antichrist, the shameless one, you were unable to raise the dead because you have no power to give life. That's the whole theme of this book. We see Tabitha, who is killed by this man, and she's raised from the dead. Enoch and Elijah sacrifice their mortal bodies and get replaced with their spiritual bodies. And uh, you know, this Antichrist appears being able to do all these miracles that Yahusha did, except he can't raise the dead. And so that's really fascinating. That all through here we see Yahuwah with the power to raise the dead, raise the dead, raise the dead. So, but let's see. I'm trying to.
yeah, yeah. So let's talk about the son of lawlessness. We see in chapter 3, verses 14, a description, and I thought this was very interesting and telling. That verses 15. He is a dot 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 of. So I wonder if there was something missing in the translation there. He is of a skinny legged young lad having a tuft of gray hair at the front of his bald head. His eyebrows will reach to his ears. There's a leprous bare spot on the front of his hands. So I got two thoughts. We notice a gray patch of hair at the front of his bald head, and we know the sign. The sign is going to be where on the forehead and on the hand. So here we got this gray hair on the front of his bald head, and then this leprous, which we know is white, bare spot on the front of his hand. So there's his sign being seen upon him. And then obviously it talks about him being able to transform himself, I guess shape shift or whatever. So what your thoughts on that?
Well, I went over last Shabbat. Of course, you were there for it. On And you were there for the study on where we went over leprosy, and it is really interesting because in every case we can find in Scripture of leprosy, it is a spiritual condition, and I don't see any reason why it's not the mark of Cain originally. So, I don't think leprosy apparently exists anymore. I mean, that what they call leprosy is clearly not the biblical leprosy, and so he seems to be coming with like a mark of Cain here. The shape shifting is definitely interesting too. It tells us that obviously, uh, I mean, he's the devil, right? So um, whoever whether he's the child or the old man or whatever, that's not really who he is. That's I guess my thoughts. James, do you have any thoughts on that? I mean,
No,
all
I'm listening to you guys. It's fascinating.
I mean,
We,
obviously, the no-brainer here is that he's the son of lawlessness. I mean, that's just so everybody knows. That means to be without Torah. So, the one a good way, a good indicator. When I went over to Torah, I remember the biggest thing. People were freaking out. Everybody who is a Torah student knows what this is like. People start freaking out, and one of the things I got regularly is, "Oh no, you're totally going to be deceived by the Antichrist now, because the Antichrist is going to be Torah pursuant, and you're totally going to fall for him. I'm like, are we reading the same Bible here? Because how could the man of lawlessness obey the law? How could he advocate for the law? Like that's the thing that unfortunately the Christian church never teaches. The man of lawlessness is the man of sin because he is incapable of keeping Torah. So yes, there are many things here that he is able to do, like walk on water and have the sun change, night, day, fire, all sorts of stuff. But he can't raise the dead, and he can't keep Torah. So if this is future tense, and there is a man who is the Illuminati sponsored Messiah, the Zionist, or whatever card they play, uh, I I'm not going to fall for somebody who it tells me to be disobedient. Like, we don't need to keep Sabbath anymore. Or, you don't need to keep the Feast of Yah. Or, you don't need to be circumcised. Like, those would be red flags for me to go, I don't think that man is speaking for the Most High. I think hopefully, Rob, you will agree with me there. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, we see the great things he does as you read in verses like 8 through 12. There, I believe it is. What he can do, except he just can't raise the dead, and it's going to be very powerful. I mean, if he can cure blindness and have the dumb speak and the deaf hear, and the lepers cleansed, and the ill being healed, demons, even casting out demons. And multiple signs and wonders. I mean, it's going to be, just unicorns and rainbows there. So he's going to be doing some great things, and I just wonder if there's going to be any resemblance of the sign on his followers' foreheads and hands. If there's going to be any resemblance to his in any sort of way, or if it's just uh, well, either way, the resemblance is as we know is going to be in the forehead or the hand, whatever that may look like.
And now, for those of you that were not a part of my last study where I went over the 7,000 timeline deception again, I did talk about leprosy some and how it deals with the eighth great day. Well, there were a couple things in there about leprosy that I want to talk about. And one is that leprosy is always a sign of rebellion against the Most High. We see with Elisha when he brought Naaman down into the Jordan River and he baptized him down there, or he didn't baptize him, he had him dip himself. Elisha wasn't there, which insulted Naaman, but he was cured of his leprosy. And his servant, Elisha's servant, then went and asked for payment, even though Elisha didn't want it, and he ended up getting his leprosy. The same thing happened with Miriam, the brother of Moshe and Aaron. When Aaron and Moshe started to spread some rumors about Moshe, and Yahuwah quickly called them into the tent of meeting, and Miriam got leprosy. This is always a sign of rebellion and lawlessness. Like I said, the mark of Cain. I believe the mark of Cain was leprosy. So what's interesting here is we do see the leper's bare spot on his front of his hands. Now, this is probably, this is one of the things I talk about, that we're reading an English Targum from, it escapes me at the moment what this originally was, what this translation comes from. Clearly, I think this originated in Hebrew. Clearly. And I think that's one of the things that's actually not really debated amongst historians. They all believe this was originally Hebrew. And so when it says that he has a tuft of gray hair at the front of his bald head, it's a really interesting description. I wonder if it's that talking about that passage in Exodus where it talks about like the white hair, which is a sign of I think of leprosy, and that's kind of what I think is happening there. The tuft of gray hair. I wonder if he has leprosy on his head and his hand, and he's obviously unclean. But the world, they can see this physically, but they ignore it because they're like, man, but look at the amazing things this guy does. He's clearly so powerful, and so we're going to believe what he says. Even though someone who knows their Torah knows that this guy is unclean, and the Messiah would never be unclean. Another thing to think about for those who say that if you're Torah pursuant, that you're going to be deceived by the Antichrist. No, we can read what the purity laws are and understand that Messiah is not going to be unclean with leprosy like this. So, um, yeah. So I think I went over.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to touch back on the 60 that we were talking about. As Katie mentioned there, the 144,000 is divisible by 60, giving it 2,400. So what I'm thinking is, what if, as we know, there's always a ranking, and there's always those above others. So if there's a ranking even in the 144,000, and we're looking at the number 60 righteous ones. So if we had 12,000 from each of the tribes, as it is described in Revelation on the 144,000, 12,000 from each tribe. And so from each tribe, if there are five in the 12,000, five, which also represent, I think it's completeness, but uh, five of the top in the 12,000 that rule, or I don't want to say rule, but are leaders of 2,400 each, then 5 times 12 is 60. So that could be 60 if that is the marching orders of the 144,000. Just a thought if you're looking at that number to see how that may fit.
Now, another thing here that's interesting is that we see. Okay, I'm going to turn back. I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit to chapter 5, verse 5. Kind of jumping all over the place tonight, but it says, then Gabriel and Uriel will become a pillar of light, leading them into the Holy Land, which that's kind of interesting because we see a pillar and it's leading people into the second great exodus into the Holy Land, which is paradise. We know this Holy Land is paradise because it says in the next verse, it will be granted to them to eat from the tree of life. So now they're up in paradise. Well, Gabriel's kind of interesting because who is he? He's the protector of who? Of Israel, of Yasharel. So we see the great gathering here of Israel all over the earth. And then we see Uriel, who oh man, I'm already a little rusty at him, but he was the in the series we did on the only begotten daughter of Elohim, he was the protector of penitents, I believe. So that's kind of interesting to see that these two, and and I know this is Aramaic Targum territory, but it also talks about the pillars of light in the wilderness, and that I believe that there were angels in the pillars as well. And so that's just kind of interesting there to see that reference back to Exodus. And again, a lot of this stuff is hard because this is a translation thing, but to me that screams second Exodus right there. And yeah, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, so some of the other contrasts we see Revelation comes here in chapter 5, verse 8. Remember in Revelation, there was the Feast of the Birds. Well, but then here we don't see the Feast of the Birds. We see the birds will fall on the earth dead. So there's just a lot of little tiny things when we pay attention to that. Like I almost don't think that my opinion on this is that if someone were trying to write a book that is a forgery or not legit, and they're trying to match up to the book of Revelation, there are some things in here that are purposely different. Like it would just, if I'm trying to write an apocalypse, I'm just thinking as a writer that I would take all these cues in Revelation and then I would try to interweave this into my narrative if I'm making something up. And here you see them take, seems to me like very complete turns than what I would expect. So,
Yeah, and I know there's different ways of interpreting it, but if it's being said that all birds will die, then yeah, that's definitely different. But if it just says birds will fall to the earth dead, that could be interpreted as birds in many different areas, but not all the birds. So that's the part that gets me, because I try to look for keywords that are inclusive or exclusive, and when you find a total opposite, then yeah, those raise red flags on something that is off on
Well,
the writings.
Well, I'm not saying this is off. I'm saying that this is more evidence to me that they are not trying to mimic Revelation. There are some things,
Sure, yeah,
there are some things, from a prophetic scale language, apocalyptic. Yeah, you're going to see similar language. The sun goes dark, the moon goes blood red, this kind of stuff. Remember in Revelation where it was just blowing my mind when I'm reading like chapter 16, 17, 18 in there, and we're seeing the destruction of Jerusalem. Now, back in the day, I would say there's no way that could be Jerusalem because it's talking about this worldwide event and, this like fire coming out of the sky and all this kind of stuff. And then I'm reading this and going, no, this isn't worldwide. This is about when it talked about like the sea would turn blood red. That was like the Sea of Galilee. That happened in the war of the Yahudim with Josephus, who was there, and the bodies were and all the animals died, and they were like bobbing on top, and the whole sea was red, and the bodies were piling up along the Jordan River all the way down to the Dead Sea and damming it up. That's how much bodies and blood there was. It wasn't a worldwide event. But you read that and you go, it seems like, people will say to me, well, no, if Revelation happened, then we're all the dead animals and stuff. I'm like, well, it wasn't talking about a worldwide event. So again, when you're looking at this, again, it seems very epic on a worldwide scale, but no, I don't think it's saying all the birds died. It says the earth will be dry, the waters of the sea will dry up, the sinners will groan. Yes, I think, there was a major reset event. It says twice in here in chapter 5. I went over this last Sabbath. It says twice in here that fire comes down and burns up the earth. And so I think there was a major melting reset event that targeted specific areas. Somebody asked me earlier today in the Discord chat, why only certain places and not others? Well, I don't know. I guess Yahuwah, targeted them just as he targeted Sodom and Gomorrah. He took out Sodom and Gomorrah and like 5 cities there, or so many cities in the area. But obviously he didn't take out Jerusalem and Jericho and some of the others. So there was, a worldwide, I think, disaster catastrophe here, but it doesn't mean all the giraffes in Africa died, or all the leopards in South America died, or all the beavers in North America died. It just meant that, there was a lot of death, if that makes any sense.
yeah, and it goes back to, like you say, a worldwide event, and different areas are suffering more than others, and it's just like every judgment and reset, there is massive changes to geography, to the water, the land, as I said, and the peoples and animals, etc., that survive and adapt to these changes.
Now, Rebecca just brought up a really good point, and I didn't even think about this, but she's absolutely correct. She said birds are falling dead from the sky, which is absolutely true. True. You can look at the news, and all over the world, fish are coming up floating dead in places, and just birds are dropping over dead, and there's these things all over the world. So if I were a writer, and like these were like, we're in the end times again, and I'm writing about this, and the people were crying out, and in fear of this virus or whatever, and yeah, whales beaching themselves, birds are falling over dead, and someone is 1,000 years from now, 2,000 years ago, reading this, going, "Oh wow, it sounded like nothing survived." Well, that's not true. There are many things that survived, but we're seeing this. We're seeing fires everywhere, and tornadoes and hurricanes, and tsunamis and earthquakes, and these volcanoes everywhere. The number of volcanoes erupting are through the roof at this point. The whole ring of fire and all that. So clearly the earth is in pain and it's crying out, and it feels very apocalyptic almost in the times we're living in now. Well, I don't have much more. Well, I could talk about this book a long time. I will just throw out there that last week when I went over the history of Joseph the Carpenter, as well as that one, I was kind of on the fence with. I was like, this might, there's things I liked about it. There were things that clearly that Rome put in there that I can't accept. The Apocalypse of Stephen, I wasn't big on, but this one, I love this book. And as I said earlier, there are things about this book I can't defend. There are things I wasn't there. I can't prove that this happened or didn't happen. Uh, but I really like this book. There's nothing that I read in this book that creates a red flag for me in terms of Torah, scripture, the prophets. It seems all in alignment. The biggest red flag that I pointed out, the Buzz Aldrin moon flag, is where the people who flee Jerusalem are kind of looked at as like they couldn't deal with the martyrdom, and whereas Yahusha's like, get out of Jerusalem, like flee. And when you see the desolation of abomination, and the abomination of desolation, and so here it's either a different event, which is my thought, or if this is the same event as Revelation, then we've got a red flag there. I have a little trouble with that, but otherwise, I love this book from beginning to end. It's a book I could talk about from. I'm really glad to read this tonight, to introduce this to you guys. If you haven't read this before, James, do you have any last thoughts on this? You said you've been taking it all in, but there's got to be something that you want to mention or comment on. That's okay. Maybe he took a bathroom break. Rob,
No, I'm here.
Okay.
No, I had no more to add. I got to step away here, but yeah, that's my comments without studying this prior or anything, just off the cuff, reading it and giving some input. But I do find some of the language and timeline spoken about this very interesting, of what this looked like with this with the details in here, how it played out before the 1,000 year reign. So I just, yeah, there was definitely a terraforming that went on right before the 1,000 year reign. So very interesting.
All right. Well, I'm going to open this up. Anyone else listening in, if you have any thoughts, comments on this, questions, this is your time to speak or forever hold your peace. Not really forever hold your peace. So you can always uh, ask me a question tomorrow morning or later tonight. I'll answer it tomorrow. But if you want to talk during our recording before we shut this thing down, does anyone have anything they want to add?
It talked about Eliyahu will come down and fight against. And pardon my ignorance, but who is Eliyahu and what do we know about him?
That's the Hebrew name for Elijah. So we see Elijah and Enoch, also known as Hanok, if I'm pronouncing that correct. And those are their Hebrew names. So I try as often as possible to put in their proper Hebrew names in here. But so
Thank you.
This is where I commented on earlier that we all know about Elijah and Enoch. I do not believe the two witnesses from the book of Revelation are Elijah and Enoch. I actually wonder, and I've made a point of this before, that Yaakov, who is James, the brother of Yahusha, if he is actually one of the two witnesses that is talked about in Revelation. I don't quite know who the other is. It might be Yochanan, John. But I talked about how James, Yaakov, was killed at the temple at the hands of Annas the high priest. He was improperly, illegally tried and murdered. And because of that, Annas, interestingly enough, was one of the 10, one of the 10 horns of the beast that was giving dominion. One of the 10 kings was given dominion for an hour. He was one of the 10 generals during the war of the Jews. And so I speculate that he is. So then we have Elijah and Enoch, and there's obviously tons of prophecies. Everybody knows, there's tons of books that talk about them. Not really always in canon, but they talk about in the end days. And here we see Tabitha, and you were there last week, John, when we talked about the book, the history of Joseph the Carpenter, in which it talked about that Elijah, Enoch, or Eliyahu, Hanok, Tabitha, and Sheila would appear. And that's the reason I'm reading this week, because Tabitha shows up and she's killed at the and I guess like the Antichrist, like he drinks her blood or whatever. It's a pretty gruesome picture. It's it's interesting, all the research we're coming to in the True of the World about blood and how the elite, what they do with blood and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of blood in this book, which is interesting. Anybody else before we close? Okay, well, I'd like to thank Rob for joining me tonight. It looks like he stepped out. He had things to do. I'd like to thank Rob and also James, as always, for reading with me. He does a great job. And with that, we will officially close the night. So thank you for sitting through another episode of Deep Text with me and entertaining me, because I love reading through these books. And I know other people do on YouTube land as well. So hope I didn't let you guys down this week, because last week people were getting angry with me because I wasn't I wasn't signing off on those books. But I'm giving my stamp on this one. I'm saying that this one, in my opinion, is a book that has some serious inspiration markings on this, that I believe is post canon, post revelation. So with that, we are done. I'm gonna let the after party begin. You guys are unusually quiet recently, which is okay.
For everything. And plus, I don't feel good, so I'm not real chatty today.
Well, I'm sorry I don't feel good. As Rebecca knows, and a couple other people here, my family and I just went through almost 2 weeks of some of the worst sickness. And I mean, I haven't been sick in 3 years. I went through the whole COVID-19 pandemic, never getting sick. And no, it wasn't COVID that I got, but it was, some, like, it was like 2 weeks of just diarrhea and vomiting. It was awful. It was awful. We got through it, and we rebounded. And today was my first day where, like, all four of us were all healthy and good. Thank you, Tora Girl, for that feedback. It's I hope that going through these are as meaningful to you guys as. And the thing is I find is that usually when I do presentations where I advertise it that I'm going to present my findings on something, I get twice as big of a crowd. I get a lot more people. But when I advertise, hey, we're going to like read a book of the Bible and we're going to discover this together, I get half the crowd. And for those of you who were with me in our studies like a year ago, and there was just like 10 of us who would show up, and we started reading through some of these books, man, it was like so moving, because we were just like discovering all this stuff together, like serpent seed and feminine ruach hakodesh, and we were discovering like the possibility that Elohim has a only begotten daughter, and just going on and on and on and on. And it was things that as we were reading this together, we were discovering it. And then I'm going back and I'm, typing all this down and creating these papers. But like, it's in these reads as we're going through them that I'm discovering these things with you. And so I do appreciate that you guys are here and, giving in your 2 cents. And as always, it's okay if you don't like this stuff. It's, if you don't like a particular book or something like that, it's always okay.
Well, I'm thoroughly enjoying this series for sure.
Thanks, John, and I'm thoroughly enjoying that you're here.
Oh, thank you. I wish I had known about it sooner.
I'm really enjoying all these texts that I've never been exposed to because I don't have as much time to read as I'd like sometimes, and I haven't tackled a lot of the books outside quote canon. And so I love to go through things like this. Although tonight was terrible. I've been under attack all day and I missed half of it. Just distraction after distraction. The enemy is trying to drag me away. So this will be one time I'm gonna have to really go back and listen to the video to because I missed chunks of it, and I feel really bad because it sounded like it was awesome, but the enemy just didn't want me to hear it today, apparently.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was having obviously distraction on my end because it was just the most bizarre thing. The internet just shut off on me right as James is reading. I missed like half of chapter 3 or something. So, and I was like scrambling to get the internet back on. I'm hotspotting my phone. It shut off, and then there was no internet here, and I was like, whatever. I got it back working again, but I'm gonna have to re-record chapter 3. So it'll actually kind of work out because then James will read 1 and 2 and 4, and I'll read 3 and 5. But um, yeah. So I mean, there were obviously complications on my end too. All right. Well, I'll stick around a little bit longer and chat with you guys. What's up?
Well, I really just enjoy these extra biblical books. Um, I made the analogy to a friend of mine the other day that going through these, it gives you these references almost like how we speak in pop culture references today. You know, we've all seen the same movies growing up, and then we'll use lines from those and stuff like that to make a point that you'd only get if you had seen that movie. And I feel like with these extra biblical books, it's kind of a similar thing where you get these references that then you go and read the scripture and they make a reference to it. And now you have an understanding of it that you didn't have before.
Yeah, I agree.
I kind of wanted to bring up just some random. This is completely off topic, but I've been just mulling over the whole lie that we're so high tech, and and the evidence is, to me at least, it seems to point to this is leftover, cobbled together, you know like I believe there was free energy in the millennial reign, and we've got electricity, but it's all wired. It's not wireless. It's all cluttery and doesn't work that great, compared to what I imagine it did look like, in the past. And I was just thinking, like about the pyramids and things like that, things that were built way before the millennial reign. Talking about some of these cathedrals and stuff, and how on earth did they build these with, horses and wagons and buggies being the tech. And I got to thinking about something that I had read, and I don't even remember where I read it, but it was about Solomon's throne. And apparently, if whatever I read was to be believed, he had a throne that was mechanical. It gears, levers, the thing would slide out, do things. Um, I don't know if you guys could say more about that, but I just got to thinking, if the Masons in the time of Solomon, this is they're all about Solomon and everything. But if they had so much technology that they could come up with simple, you know, gears and pulleys and things to make a throne move in certain ways, and then why would we think that they didn't have a lot more stuff? I mean, I just think it's a big fat lie that we're technologically superior. To me, this looks like the wreckage of Earth, not, I think when he created it, it was really a lot more grand, and it's still beautiful, but if it's this beautiful in its wreckage, imagine what it looked like before. I'm just rambling, but anyway.
But satellites, Rebecca, satellites. uh, yeah. No, I know it's yeah. I don't know much about I haven't heard that about Solomon's throne. Has anybody else heard that? That's the first time I've heard about pulleys and levers and all.
Well, I'm gonna have to go try to find it now because, I read it. I don't even remember where I read it. Maybe it was in, maybe it was something Josephus wrote because I was reading all this. Was it the history of the where he had written it for, whatever Roman guy he wrote it for, and the one thing that stood out to me about that was he left out the entire golden calf incident, and that was a glaring omission. But maybe he was the one that was writing about, Solomon's throne. I can't remember.
Did Josephus leave out the golden calf?
Yeah, it was glaringly gone. I mean, he did the whole thing about, I mean, he went through the entire history, Moses, all of it. But the golden calf, and them worshiping the golden that was completely left out. And now, interestingly, he did mention, if I remember correctly, he did mention the where was it, Samaria or something, when something there was a split and they were worshiping, idol. He did put in about other idol worship, but he left out the whole golden calf and Moses thing. I was like, why did he leave that out?
Hmm.
It was over a year ago that I read that. I read that before I found you guys. I was on the whole hunt for, Yahusha and Yahuwah's name because I knew there was no J, so I started reading Josephus with a J.
Well, Noel, what are some of the books on your list that you're really excited about for this series?
Okay, well let me look. I gotta look this up. Um, let's see. I had a list somewhere, and I don't know where that list went. Oh, maybe here's the list. All right. Let's see. We already went over the Gospel of Gamaliel, Lament of the Virgin, and then we went over the history of Joseph the Carpenter, the Revelation of Stephen. All right. I want to go over the beheading of John the Baptist, the Didache, the martyrdom of Polycarp. There's actually a few martyrdom books I want to go over. The Mother's Lament at the Slaughter of the Innocents, the Testament of our Father Adam, the Letters and Trial of Pontius Pilate, the Martyrdom of Pilate, the Letter of Lentulus, which I've gone over before in the past, but it's worth going over again, the Gospel of Bartholomew, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Truth, the Gospel of Philip, the Testament of Solomon, the Infancy Gospel of Matthew. That would take at least 2 to 3 weeks probably to go through. Second Enoch, that'd be another big 2 or 3 week read. Third Baruch, the Ascension of Isaiah, Tales of the Patriarchs. That's a really good one because people don't know much about that one. The Book of the Giants, the War Scroll. I don't know about the War Scroll. That's a lot of logistics and details. And then Bell and the Dragon. That's a quick read. The Book of Susanna is a quick read. Apocalypse of Abraham. Probably not going to do that now because Zen Garcia and I are doing that series. I think we do it next week. So I have to.
Oh,
So I have to study up on that because it's gonna be like a 3-week series that he and I are going through that. The first and second apocalypse of James are some on my list. Let's see. I have others, but yeah, I mean that's definitely good for right now. They'll take me into the
yeah,
fall.
that sounds great.
They'll probably take me into the fall and then I'll probably take a break. We'll do like a season, we'll do like maybe 15, 20 episodes of this, and then we'll probably take a break and I'll do other things on Thursday night, and then we can always come back to it.
Do you have any idea of when Zen will be able to release some of the Thracian Chronicles.
I don't know. Has he released any of them yet? I know that he's doing like a video on them, I think, very soon.
Oh, nice. Oh, I know he's read a good bit of it on his shows, but I just didn't know if he had anything in the works for getting them published.
I'm not sure. I mean, Zen and I usually when we talk, we kind of talk business, because he's got a very tight schedule with all the things he's got to do throughout the day. But yes, I don't really keep up too much with what his release schedule is. I know he's really hankering to get back to writing again because he hasn't written a lot. He did the Dragon Lords book, but he he hasn't done a lot of writing recently because he's been really big on the cryptocurrency and other things, and so he's putting together uh a Ruach Hakodesh book, which I don't know if he's ever done before. Surprisingly, I don't think he's ever just written a book just on the Ruach Hakodesh. So he's putting one together right now, and he actually asked for me to if I could put one of my papers in there. So I think, and he's also putting Rob Skiba's article on there because Rob Skiba went feminine Ruach before he died, and he wrote like this article.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
I've been really missing Rob lately, I tell you. I actually shed some tears for him the other day. Mm.
yeah. A lot of us do. Absolutely. This is what Rebecca, do you want to just go over really quickly what you put down here? It's okay.
Oh, you can do it. I'll tell you one thing that disturbs me, something about the demon putting him on this seat. Wow.
Okay, so well, that's one of the books we're going to go over before I read this is the Testament of Solomon. I don't know how I feel about that book. It is a crazy book. It's one of those books you get it or you don't. And it's all about like apparently Solomon had this like ring of power that could, you know, conjure spirits and stuff. And it's really interesting the book because it's like if you ever saw the movie Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters is like the playbook of Testament of Solomon. It is like so on the money on the spot with that. But there was a long held belief, and even in the Dead Sea Scrolls, that attributed that they there was a within Judaism they believed that the Messiah would have control over the demons, which is obviously when Messiah showed up, that was a huge sign. Nobody else in biblical history had control over the demons but Messiah. The only other people attributed is Solomon. And some people say David, but I don't see a lot. I haven't seen the records of that. But and so the Testament of Solomon is all about that. And I don't even want to give away the ending, but it does. It's the only book I have read that fills in the missing pieces of the tragic tale of Solomon, what happened to him, which is quite the opposite of Messiah. He did not have the tragic end. All right, so this is what it says. Mechanism. Go ahead.
Before you read that, actually, that's Anchor 18. Go back up to where I posted that link and where it says Anchor 17. Click on that, not the part that says Solomon,
Okay.
but click on that, and that gives a description of the throne, and then the mechanism of the throne follows that. So go back just a little bit because it's fascinating.
Okay, let's see here if I can. Okay. There we go. All right, so I'm reading from Solomon's Throne or Solomon's Marriage. I'm reading Solomon's Throne. Okay. Solomon's throne is described at length in Targum Sheni. Okay, so Sheni. And in two later Midrashim published by Jelinek. The second also by J. Perles. According to Targum Sheni, which is compiled from three different sources, there were on the steps of the throne 12 golden lions and 12 golden eagles, so placed that each lion faced an eagle. Another account says that there were 72 lions and the same number of eagles. Further, it is stated that there were 6 steps to the throne on which animals, all of gold, were arranged in the following order. On the first step, a lion opposite an ox. On the second, a wolf opposite a sheep. On the third, a tiger opposite a camel. On the fourth, an eagle opposite a peacock. On the fifth, a cat opposite a cock. On the sixth, a sparrowhawk opposite a dove. On the top of the throne was a dove holding a sparrowhawk in its claws, symbolizing the dominion of Yasharel over the Goyim, the Gentiles. There was also on the top of the throne a golden candlestick, on the 7 branches of the one side of which were engraved the names of the 7 patriarchs: Adam, Noah, Shem, Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, and Job. I never thought of Job as a patriarch, but and on the 7 of the other, the names of Levi, Kohath, Amram, Moshe, Aaron, Eldad, Medad, and in addition, Hur. Another version has Haggai. Above the candlesticks was a golden jar filled with olive oil, and beneath it a golden basin which supplied the jar with oil, and on which the names of Nadab, Abihu, and Eli and his 2 sons were engraved. Over the throne, 24 vines were fixed to cast a shadow on the king's head. By a mechanical contrivance, the throne followed Solomon wherever he wished to go. The description given in the 2 midrashim mentioned above differs somewhat from the foregoing, referring to the words, "Then Solomon sat on the throne of Yahuwah." 1 Chronicles 24:23. The second midrash remarks that Solomon's throne, like that of Elohim, was furnished with the 4 figures representing a man, a lion, an ox, and an eagle. Now that's fascinating, with cherubim and wheels. While the first midrash agrees to a greater extent with Targum Sheni, the second one substitutes for the order in which the pairs of animals were arranged the following: a sheep and a wolf, a deer and a bear, a roebuck and an elephant, a buffalo and a griffin, a man and a demon, a mountain cock and an eagle, a dove and a sparrowhawk, the clean beasts and fowls being to the right, and the unclean ones to the left of the throne. The mechanism of the throne. Solomon's progress to his throne is similarly described in Targum Sheni and in the 2 midrashim. According to the former work, when the king reached the first step, the ox, by means of some sort of mechanism, stretched forth its leg on which Solomon leaned, a similar action taking place in the case of the animals on each of the 6 steps. From the 6th step, the eagles raised the king and placed him in his seats, near which a golden serpent lay coiled. When the king was seated, the large eagle placed the crown on his head, the serpent uncoiled itself, and the lions and eagles moved upwards to form a shade over him. That's pretty intense. The dove then descended, took the scroll of the law from the ark, and placed it on Solomon's knees. When the king sat surrounded by the Sanhedrin to judge the people, the wheels began to churn, and the beasts and fowls began to utter their respective cries, which frightened those who had intended to bear false testimony. Moreover, while Solomon was ascending the throne, the lions scattered all kinds of fragrant spices. In the second midrash, it is said, when Solomon wished to sit on his throne, the ox took him gently on its horns and handed him over to the lion, which in turn delivered him to the sheep, and so on until the seat was reached. Then the demon placed him on the seat, which was of gold, studded with precious stones, and put under his feet a footstool of sapphire, which he had brought from heaven. The 6 steps also were studded with precious stones and with crystal, and there were besides arches from which palm trees arose high over the throne to make a shadow for the king's head. I'm out of breath. Both midrashim state that when Solomon was seated, a silver serpent turned a wheel which caused the eagles to spread their wings over the king's head. Then one lion placed the crown on his head, while another placed the golden scepter in his hand. It is explained in the first midrash that 6 steps were constructed because Solomon foresaw that 6 kings would sit on the throne, namely Solomon, Rehoboam, Hezekiah, Manasseh, Amon, and Josiah. After Solomon's death, King Shishak, when taking away the treasures of the temple, carried off the throne, which remained in Egypt till Sennacherib conquered that country. After Sennacherib's fall, Hezekiah gained possession of it. When Uzziah was slain by Pharaoh Necho, that later took it away, but not knowing the proper use of it, he was struck by one of the lions and became lame. How sad. Nebuchadnezzar, into whose possession the throne subsequently came, shared a similar fate. The throne then passed to the Persians, with whom it remained till it came into the possession of Ahasuerus, who, however, could not sit upon it.